Stephen Tebid, you're from Cameroon. You live in Israel part of the year. You've done a lot of development, investigation. You're a journalist. People are concerned that Israel is shipping illegal Africans back to their country in a bad way. What's the reality of that proposition?
The question of immigration and African immigrants to Israel has become a cheap shot, a cheap opportunity to disparage Israel. First of all, most of the so-called refugees who are being repatriated to Africa, they are being repatriated to African countries that are relatively safe, and some even safer than Israel. Secondly, they are being given funds, $3,500 each. There is no village in Africa, none in any part of Africa south of the Sahara, that you cannot start a small sustainable business with the money that they are given. In fact, $2,000 is enough to start a sustainable business in any African village south of the Sahara. Well, nobody talks of the fact that plane loads of Africans are expelled from various European countries without a dime given to them. Neither are those illegal immigrants expelled from the United States given a dime. No country in the world actually repatriates illegal aliens, giving them money. So it is surprising that hypocritical Americans and Europeans would be critical of Israel for doing something better and more humanely than they do. Secondly, there's a falsehood that is a racial issue, the expulsion of immigrants. And nobody ever talks about the Africans who are successful businessmen in Israel. Beyond the Ethiopians, you have Nigerians, you have Ghanaians from Africa south of the Sahara who have successful and viable businesses and have been living in Israel legally for many years.
Are they able to stay?
They have been living there for many years. They have families. And so nobody wants to look at this. Nobody talks about that. But you look at people who have crossed many other countries. Now, those people who are concerned about the African immigrants, these people don't come from countries that are bordering Israel. They come across other African countries. They pass through other African countries where some of them are enslaved, some of them are killed. But Israel that gets them and wants to resettle them in a place where they may have opportunities, Israel is condemned. Many of these people are completely illiterate. They come from rural communities. And in fact, beyond menial jobs in Israel, they have no prospects of social advancement in Israel. Whereas in the places where they are being repatriated to, they have an opportunity of social advancement through the small businesses that they can open there.
Would they live better in Africa than in Israel?
Of course. If they, where they are resettled, if they invest the money in any productive activity, say farming, say grazing, they will make a life far more comfortable than they will ever have in Israel. If these people go to rural areas in Africa where there's abundant land, the possibility of opening small business where there are none, they, in fact, with 3,000 euros, they are far richer than 80% of the people in those villages.
So it's a generous deal Israel's offering them and people shouldn't criticize it?
It is obviously a generous. Why do the Europeans not do it? They repatriate more Africans back to Africa. More African refugees are repatriated by Europe.
How much do they give them who they send out?
Nothing. Not even a dime.
How about America?
Africans are repatriated from the United States every day. They don't go with a dime. In fact, some of them are not even allowed to pick up the little things that they have accumulated while they have been in Europe or in the United States. They pick you on the street, they lock you up, and they take you to the airport. So even the little pennies that you have, or that you might have left in your bedroom, you may never have access to them. So the hypocrisy is beyond belief. Do these critics, what have these critics said about the conduct of Europe and the United States towards illegal African immigrants who are being repatriated? Or are the ones repatriated by Europe and Africa less deserving, less human than those repatriated from Israel?
Saying that they're being hypocritical and bigoted.
It is both hypocritical and bigoted. I would want, when the Europeans start giving 5,000 or 10,000 euros to Africans they repatriate, then they will have a standing to say maybe Israel is not giving the people enough money to start a life with. But until they do so, and I know they will never do so, then the criticism of Israel becomes actually an anti-Semitic action. Why would you criticize the United States government, which is far richer, or the European governments who are far richer, and you criticize a small country that has such a little base of revenue? If you were not anti-Semitic, why is Israel held to a different standard than that which is practiced all over the world?
And is this hypocrisy practiced by white leftists or also black anti-Zionists?
First of all, I haven't seen any blacks who are critical of the African policy of Israel. Because frankly speaking, it would be out of ignorance if they compare Israeli contributions to African development to the United States. You would find that per capita, Israeli contribution to the development of Africa is much better, much more efficient than that of Europe and the United States that are stealing all the resources of the continent. The pennies that the Europeans and the Americans give to Africa is only to cover for the billions they take out of the continent. Israel is taking nothing. Israel is not taking African oil. Israel is not taking African diamonds or African gold. Those things, the wealth of those nations are being robbed by European and American institutions. But they cannot, the critics of Israel don't even look at that. So I wonder whether their interests, they are more interested in the faith of Africans, or they are more interested in bashing Israel, because their countries have a better chance of improving the lives of these people and in fact avoiding their fleeing their countries. Israel hasn't contributed to the African refugee problem. Europe and the United States have. Corrupt European and corrupt American companies buy out African politicians, rob the wealth of their nations, and inhibit the development of these nations, which produces the refugees in the first place. So they should be at the forefront of solving the problem. And the Europeans and Americans who are critical of Israel are hypocrites and liars, because they have not gone to the source of the problem. Why don't we talk about avoiding refugees at all in totality?